Let me introduce you to our latest sponsor, the Andre Law Firm. Andre Law can represent you or your business in a variety of civil and commercial matters. Do you have a client that has proven difficult to collect from? Andre Law also specializes in collection law and can expedite your collection on judgments from your defaulting clients. The principal of Andre Law Firm is Tony Andre, a North Miami native with years of experience representing businesses and individuals throughout the state of Florida. Based in Aventura, you can give him a call at 786-708-0813 or visit his website at andrelaw.com. Again, give Andre Law a call at 786-708-0813 to set up your consultation.
All right, I want to talk to you about a new sponsor of ours, and it's one that is very relevant to the moment. They're a new division of Greenview Construction, and they are called Making America Clean Again. Making America Clean Again holds certificates in bacterial, viral, fungi, and mold cleaning treatments. They offer professional cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, and sterilization services to a wide range of residential and commercial projects. You can do overnight ozone UV generator treatments or even permanently install UV ionized advanced oxidation technology into your HVAC system. Now, we know and understand, and quite frankly, we hope, that businesses across the state and nation remain shuttered as long as absolutely necessary to beat back the spread of the coronavirus. But when that time finally comes, having that certificate to display at your workplace showing that it has been properly cleaned by a licensed professional and maintained will go a long way to restoring that customer trust. So for more information, you can look up Making America Clean Again. You can go to their website at www.macainc.net, or you can just call them at 855-561-6653. Again, that's 855-561-6653.
Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to another edition of 3 Yards Per Carry. This is part 2 of our NFL Draft Preview 2020 edition. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. And today we're covering the defense. But before we get to that, I wanted to touch on something before we move on to talk about defensive line prospects. And have you guys seen this Dave Gettleman photo that is making the rounds on Twitter?
Of course, I passed it to you.
I know. But, I'm trying to set you up for that, okay? Simon, have you seen it?
I have. I love his hand sanitizer.
Okay, that's where we're going with this, all right? Simon gets to go first. We're going to play a little game here. What is he missing in that room? Simon, you go first.
Tissues, stripper pole. What's he missing? Any technology that was built after 1998. I love the fact that his mouse is still connected to his computer.
I've seen
no,
that.
that's really good.
That's brilliant.
I mean, does he not have a proper mouse? What's that all about? He doesn't even need a mouse. What's wrong with him? He's also only got, like I saw in Peter King's column on Monday, Tom Telesco, the Chargers GM, took a photograph of his setup.
Uh-huh.
I counted 6 computer screens on his desk area and 3 televisions. Dave Gettleman's literally got one old laptop, probably like a Dell from 1996.
That he's still paying the lease on, right?
It's a kitchen table chair too.
Yes. No,
well,
and he has
I think it's fascinating.
He has an inkjet printer on the floor, if you've noticed.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating seeing all these coaches in there and GMs. Thomas Dimitrov did his whole sort of tour of how the draft, how his office was looked and what would happen on draft night and how everything was set up. Andy Reid is using one of his wife's old, or indeed his old wife, one of his wife's old antique tables in the basement. Telesco set up in the kitchen with these 6 computers and 3 TVs. And there's Dave Gettleman with his hand sanitizer.
But let's not forget what else he has out there.
Yeah, there's lotion.
Right behind the hand sanitizer is the hand lotion.
A little bit of love lotion.
A little bit of love lotion at the computer desk.
Well, I'm fascinated. What do you think he has written on that Post-it note that he has stuck to his laptop?
His passwords.
Trade down.
His passwords. It's his passwords. And his password is don't trade down.
Okay. Yeah, and I love that book that he has in front of him. Is that all the workups they have on all his prospects? All like 2,000 of them are on all in there?
I
Like
sincerely hope he is thumbing through that book furiously during the 10 minutes that he's on the clock, like trying to find the name of the guy he wants to draft.
did you see the interview he did today? He says that it's a bit different this year because you can't smell the prospects.
Mm.
That's
Or touch
interesting
or
and
feel
interesting.
them. Can't
Yeah,
smell
well,
them or feel them.
No.
yeah, well, that's unfortunate, but he does have the hand lotion, so he can,
Yes, and that mug. What is that mug? I don't get that.
it's like a bear. There's a
Yeah.
bear there.
There's a bear on that mug. He has 2 legal pads, by the way. And if you notice the legal pads, one is yellow and one is white,
Mm-hmm.
which is odd. And his
One
mouse
is-
pad
one
is
draft-
another legal pad.
One is draft these guys, and the other is don't draft these guys.
Probably, yes. And the mouse pad is another legal pad. So this guy likes his legal pads.
Oh, is his mouse pad a legal pad?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, it does look like it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah, this guy's big on legal pads.
Nice.
Wow, what a setup, man.
He's gonna spill his coffee on the laptop right in the middle of the draft.
And, yes, I can't wait. He's obviously the favorite, right? He's the
It's
favorite.
really nice wainscoting though in the background.
Nice and clean. Yeah, very
Yeah.
nice and clean. Yeah, right? Well, enough about Dave Gettleman. The Dolphins did a lot of heavy lifting on the defensive end, so you would think, okay, they're not spending a first-round pick this year on another defensive player because they spent all this money this offseason. But can you see a first-rounder on the defensive side of the football, Simon? And at what position?
100%. I mean, we were talking in the WhatsApp group over the weekend. The Dolphins really, really like a number of defensive players, and it starts with Derek Brown. The Dolphins love Derek Brown. I know this as fact. I've had it confirmed to me by 2 different sources. They love Derek Brown, one of the highest floor prospects in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
He is everything that Brian Flores would look for in terms of helping to change the culture, helping to, as a leader. He's also an outstanding player, which also helps. But yeah, I think that one of those 3 picks certainly would go on a defensive player. If I had to put my money, I would say it would be a safety. Whether that's, you can pick your poison really, depending on what you feel like or what the team feel like they need. And at the moment, I don't think anybody particularly knows who's going to be playing at what position at safety. Excuse me, whether, Bobby McCain stays at free safety, who's going to be where. So that would, you would potentially say that all bets are off in terms of, are you looking for a pure sort of single high guy like a Grant Delpit, and a guy who's an outstanding blitzer? Are you looking for a Minka Fitzpatrick redux in a Xavier McKinney type? Are you looking for Anton Winfield? Are you looking at Ashton Davis, who obviously knows Gerald Alexander, our new DB's coach, really well? So I just don't think you can judge at the moment. I think obviously 26 or 18 would be too high for Davis, but if I was a betting man, I would say that safety would probably be the highest possibility in terms of defensive player.
Now, what about? I got to ask you this then. What about Bobby McCain then? I mean, because I have heard that the Dolphins view Bobby McCain as more like of a third safety, and so that would mean that they certainly need the position. Does that squeeze him out? If they go with Ashton Davis, I think is a really good bet, just because not only is even if you didn't know about Gerald Alexander coming over from Cal and coaching Miami's DBs and the relationship he's obviously got with Ashton Davis, if you didn't know that, Ashton Davis would be like the prototype free safety that Miami could go get for this defense.
100%.
And if you think that free safety is what they need, I mean, he's fast. He's obviously got that track history, and he's an extraordinarily good athlete. But he hits really well. I mean, he comes down in support. Really good or really well. What am my English is like me. Talk so good. But he comes down in support really well for a free safety, which is something you need to look for because they're the last line of defense, and that's part of the problem with Bobby McCain. But is Bobby out? He's highly paid.
We've had this conversation a year ago on the pod. is Bobby McCain what we would say? Is Bobby McCain going to be a guy who's playing free safety for a Super Bowl winning team?
Mm.
I'm not sure that's the case.
No.
Is Bobby McCain a valuable piece to be on the back end? Probably. Is he a too expensive piece to be on the back end? Potentially. Is his best position slot corner? I still believe it probably is. But how much is too much when it comes to what he's paid vis-a-vis what he delivers, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, and I don't think, I've said it before, I don't think Bobby McCain is for long here because they kept trying to find a spot for him last year. If you noticed, they kept trying him in different places. I think they were trying to see if they could add versatility to his repertoire, and maybe that's how he sticks around here. But I think his future is at slot corner, and I don't know. He seems to have slowed down considerably, and I wouldn't pay what we're paying him to just play one position on this defense when they want a bunch of guys that they can move around and do several different things. No?
Yeah, I wonder. It's $5.5 million he's due in 2020, which is his salary. Forgetting all about cap hits and all that nonsense. And then 6.4 million the next year and 7 million the year after. I just don't see him collecting the remainder of this contract.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't either.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to interior linemen. And if we need one, I would say we need a 0 for a fact. We don't have a nose tackle type on this team. I think, although they did spend some money in namely Shaq Lawson, and they kind of like what they have at defensive tackle, I still think that they're kind of light there. And I would use one of our top 100 picks on a defensive end type. I don't know if we'd use one on a 0 type, but a 3-4 defensive end type. Simon, what do you have on tap? And then I'll give you mine.
I mean, I think if you're looking interior defensive lineman, then obviously for me, it starts with Derek Brown, who I think is, arguably one of the top 3 or 4 players in the draft. And, for me, actually, I think he's probably one of the best 1 or 2 players of the draft. We all like Javon Kinlaw. He's a bit raw, I think, but, he can play inside, outside. I think he is sudden and powerful. I was really impressed with, you go back and watch some of those pit battles that he had with Damian Lewis in the Senior Bowl. It was just a fantastic matchup between the two. I don't think he's right for us, but I think Ross Blacklock is an interesting player at TCU. I like Justin Madubuike at Texas A&M. The guy I really like, and we've talked about this in the WhatsApp, is Devon Hamilton of Ohio State. We talked about him last week. A guy who can look, he's big. He can hold up. I think as a 0 technique nose tackle.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Extremely powerful. But also, we talked about it. Early downs, he looks. There's times where he just flashes immense pass rush ability. It tends to wane as the game goes on, and I wonder whether it's a fitness issue, a conditioning issue. And I'll run through the list later on. There's a number of players the Dolphins, we've been working to confirm players the Dolphins have been talking to post the Senior Bowl. Leki Fotu, the Utah nose tackle, is a guy that they've shown interest in. They've had FaceTimes with. You could see him potentially coming, looking around about that 70th pick. That would be a good target area for a guy like Leki who could play that spot. But, Devon Hamilton is a guy that I think, would be a really good fit for this team. In terms of the 3-4 ends, you're looking at, where do you think Yetur Gross-Matos plays? Where do you think AJ Epinesa plays? Can you work them as 3-4 ends? Marlon Davidson at Auburn, Raekwon Davis at Alabama, a guy the Dolphins have had a FaceTime meeting with. Jordan Elliott of Missouri. He's kind of strong, long. I think he's a 3 technique guy that, he can bring pressure. And the kid I really like as well, probably not. He's going to probably fall in that area between Miami picking at 70 and picking at 141, 143, whenever it is the kid at LSU, whose name now completely escapes me, but just an absolutely outstanding human.
Talking about Rashad Lawrence?
Rashad Lawrence, yeah. Just just an intriguing mid-round, incredibly hard-working kid. The coaches are going to absolutely love him. 3-year team captain, a mentor for players at LSU. He would be Brian Flores' son in terms of what he brings in terms of that mental makeup. Just I like him as a player as well. But I think it's a really interesting defensive line class. But for me, I think we are all big fans of Devon Hamilton. It will be interesting to see where he ends up, because I suspect he goes higher than some people think he might.
Devon Hamilton is like for 2 downs at a time. Devon Hamilton is like Derek Brown. And that's what he reminds me of. That's how he plays, and he played against good competition. So I think he's good. But a guy that we've seen the Dolphins pay some attention to, that I took a closer look at him, and I really like him, is Darian Daniels of Nebraska. And I think that you probably have to reconcile with him not having played a ton, and having transferred from Oklahoma State, and figuring out his background and what's going on there. But we are talking about, he's over 6'3", he's 311 pounds. He ran a 5.15. He broad jump was over 9 feet, and 27-inch vertical. For a big guy, we're talking fairly decent stuff here. And his wingspan is like 82 inches, 6'10". So 34-inch arms. I mean, he's got the build. And when you watch him, he uses it's one thing to have the build, but it's another thing to be able to use the build ideally on the field. And you can tell that he uses his build. He knows how to use it, his length and strength. So I would watch him, especially since I think we all think that they might need a body that can be sort of a zero, or a space eater type. Really, the length is so important for them on the defensive line in this system. Again, that's why you look at a Darian Daniels and 6'10" wingspan and 34-inch arms. But at the same time, I don't see them using an early pick on that. Going with somebody like Derek Brown, which they would probably have to do at 5, which we'll talk about later. But no, I don't see them going with that sort of player pretty early. But I do see it, somewhere down in the draft, in the depths of the draft, in terms of adding somebody to the line. That could be a guy. Darian Daniels, I'd keep an eye on him. As for the edge and the sort of the 5 technique guys that we're talking about, considering they added Shaq Lawson, and they added what's his name, Emmanuel Agba. I'm just not. Let's not forget about Zach Seiler, that they picked up late in the year. 6'6", 290 pounds. He played out of his mind in the Cincinnati game. Yeah. And he was, and by the way, he only played in 3 games, and the game before the Cincinnati game, I think he had a dozen snaps or something like that. And I looked at him, I was like, holy shit, he looked really good. And then the next game against Cincinnati, they went ahead and gave him the full game to play, and he played out of his mind. And then the next game, I forget if he got injured or whatever happened. They just didn't play him that much. And maybe they decided that they want to try out some other players. They've seen enough, but don't count him out whatsoever, because this is going to be a significant find, I think, on the defensive line. He's a very athletic guy, tests really well. And so I think that the defensive tackle / defensive end 5 tech kind of switch hitter kind of guy between Christian Wilkins and Devon Gottschall, Emmanuel Agba, Shaq Lawson, inside outside versatility, and then Zach Seiler adding on to it. I don't know. I kind of think that they might be done. So watch out for those. And then zero technique, but probably bargain level guy. One name I'll throw out there, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's from West Georgia. His name is Azoya Alafahai, and he was at the Shrine. He was at the Shrine practices. He is a monster in terms of size, and I mean, I looked at him, and it is just an incredible build. You look at a guy that's he's big and all that, but you're like, he's more than just big. He's built. He's got an 82-inch wingspan. He's 6'4.5", 313 pounds. had a really good results at his pro day, which he did manage to have. Again, 34-inch arms, 10.5-inch hands. He's a big human.
Yeah.
He did all right. He did all right. And at the Shrine practices that I saw, he didn't play in the game itself. So I would keep an eye on somebody like him, somebody that they might look at in the undrafted range, or maybe in the 7th round range. Somebody you might not have heard of, I guess. And we'll see.
I'll give you a couple. Of course, Marlon Davidson. I think we've all mentioned him. But whenever you tune in to watch Notre Dame, everybody tunes in to watch Julian Okwara. And the guy that I always gravitate to watching is Khalid Kareem.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my notes on him, and I guess this kind of tells it all. He has lateral limitations, meaning he doesn't seem like a great athlete, and he's not particularly giant because he's 6'4", 270 pounds. So you wouldn't think of him as a 3-4 end, but it's hard to find in this draft a guy that kicks more ass inside of a 5-yard box than Khalid Kareem. His film is it's violent, and he is as good a run stopper as there is as a 5-tech anywhere in this draft. And I'd hate to earmark pick number 70, but I'd be tempted because I think that's where he's going to go. I don't know if you've seen much of him, Simon, and do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I've seen him. I like him. I think he fits what we do. And I think it's interesting, going through some of the names that Chris has just talked about, you just touched about, and then some of the names that we know that the Dolphins have met with. And I'll run through in a sec the defensive line positions. Chris talking about Darian Daniels there. I know the Dolphins also worked him out, Chris, you probably know this as well, but they worked him out as an offensive tackle as well as on the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually went to the pro day there and worked him out essentially on both lines. I think it's intriguing to look at some of the players because they're clearly not done at that edge position. 5, 7, 9, whatever you want to call it, in terms of that edge rusher. You look at the guys that, the outside rushers, then DJ Wonnum, Ty Phillips of Georgia Southern, Chauncey Rivers of Mississippi State, who, if you watched Last Chance of You, probably would have seen him there. Tashawn Wharton, Michael Danner of Michigan, Ladarius Hamilton of North Texas. These are all sort of, Wharton is 6'4", 255 pounds. These are all guys in that sort of 250 to early 260 range. Really, Fotu is the only, you look at slightly bigger guys in Larrell Murchison, Jason Stowbridge. But generally, you're looking at those sort of pass rushers, and it makes you feel like they're definitely not done there. I wonder about Kareem, Alf. I wonder whether or not he lasts as long as the 70th pick.
Can I just say something about Tashawn Wharton, though?
Yeah,
because he was at the Shrine practices as well.
Okay.
And yeah, he was, and he was a surprise. I think surprised many. He's a 6'1" and 280 pound guy. But and not a particularly big wingspan, big hands. But what he is just really athletic for that build. Like he's a 4'7" or 4'8" type of athlete at that 6'1", 280 pound stature. So, and he jumped out immediately for that. He doesn't know what he's doing, but or it didn't seem like he knew too much of what he was doing. But he was one of the biggest standouts among all of the defensive line in that Shrine week. I think that would be a strong. I'm glad the Dolphins are paying some attention to him.
What size did you say it was? Because this is the kind of fascinating dichotomy between actual, when NFL coaches get their hands on players and how they're listed. Because Wharton is listed here on the website at 6'4". And 255 pounds.
Oh boy!
Yeah, that's telling some tale.
So this is the Missouri S&T website.
Yeah.
255
everything's
pounds.
bigger. Everything's bigger as Missouri S&T, I guess. He measured out. He measured out at the Shrine game, and they got him at 6'0", so 6'1" even.
Yeah,
and 280 pounds, and with a 6'4" wingspan, and a little over 31-inch arms. So not a particular. I mean, hey, you look huge when you're on Missouri S&T tape.
Absolutely.
But it was the inside outside versatility, that sort of player. He's very fast. Actually, he reminded me, he's not this. I know he's not this, but he reminded me a little bit of Aaron Donald. And that's the kind of player that you're looking at.
Tweet that. Chris says
I'll tweet. See Aaron Donald. I shouldn't tweet that because I was such a huge fan of Aaron Donald, so I can't now I'm saying that this guy is an elite player, but he's not. But still.
Yeah. Now, to finish up with the interior linemen and the 3-4 ends, Simon, you follow Alabama closer than anybody else. Is Raekwon Davis a disappointment? Because I look at his career, and I always like to do this. I always like to look at what people were saying 2 years ago. Raekwon Davis was considered a top 5 pick 2 years ago. And now he's hoping to be late first round, early second. So was his career a disappointment?
I think it probably was a bit of a disappointment. I mean, he's a big human being.
Yeah,
he's what is he? Almost 6'7" and 311 pounds. I remember what he was.
6'0", and 311.
Okay. I mean, what I would say is that I don't think that he maximized his potential, and I have to say that look, we can be. I can be a hypocrite, I suppose, because I will often say, people will say to me, Tua can't be any good because Alabama hasn't had a good, there's not been a good Alabama quarterback in the NFL since Joe Namath, for example. And you say, well, there was never a great Cal quarterback until Aaron Rodgers came out. So, thank God Green Bay didn't listen to that nonsense. But then the flip side is that you can say, actually, let's look back at some of those great Alabama defensive players defensive line players, certainly over the last 5, 6, 7 years, slightly underwhelmed by them. Quinnen Williams last year just looked all over, didn't play particularly well. Deron Payne has kind of struggled a little bit. The kid that we all thought couldn't miss that went to Washington, Jonathan Allen, kind of struggled. I mean, not struggled, but, hasn't really had that kind of breakout moment. I think Davis is not quite the sum of his parts yet, if that makes sense. I just don't necessarily see that consistent player that I wanted to see, given his physical tools, given the, everything that he brings to the table. I just wonder, could you have been better? I know he's been, I know he's had some injury issues and things, but I don't know. I think he makes me nervous. I think, like you say, I think he would have been a first round lock, and I think he's got that great size, the long arms, and I think, I don't know. He would make me nervous. I've got to say, he's just a little bit uninspiring given the talent that he has.
Alf, you're gonna love this. You know what his wingspan is?
Wow, give it to me.
7'1".
Wow,
7'1" inch wingspan.
Wow.
85
inches.
85 inch wingspan, 34 inch arms, 11-inch hands, 11-inch hands.
11-inch hands.
And he's 6'6". He's just a shade over 6'6" and 311 pounds. And he ran a 5'1" He ran a 5'1"
With all those physical tools, though, you'd have expected him to bully offensive linemen in the SEC. Especially, I mean, okay, maybe not LSU or whatever, but you'd have expected him to make a bigger impression than he did. I think that's a fair comment to make.
But that is a fair point to make. Here's another name for you, though, Jordan Phillips. And that's, I think, what you probably this is a Planet Theory guy, and Jordan Phillips went high because he was a Planet Theory guy. And for as much trouble as Miami had with him and ended up ditching him, he does make an impact at times, doesn't he? And he is a good player at times. So maybe you're just betting on it to come on at some point, because there are very few people that are 6'6", 311 pounds with 11-inch hands, 34-inch arms, and 7'1" wingspan like this. That run a 5'1". I mean, it's pretty incredible what he is and what he can do on the field. So somebody's going to bet on that, and who knows how it comes up. There's I'm thinking of a guy I think that plays for Chicago, and I can't remember his name now, but
that giant guy. I forgot his name too.
The guy who came from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who you mean. Is it Roy? Somebody has he got a double-barreled name?
I don't know. A double-barreled name.
Well, we could move on here, but we kind of agree there's not going to be a giant investment in this draft in interior linemen and 3-4 ends, right? We can agree?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounded like there's not going to be much of an investment. Now, they did spend a little money. I guess Calvin is an edge player, but
Keem
wow.
Hicks. Did Akeem Hicks come from Canada?
Oh, he did, yeah.
Yeah,
He did.
that's him. And he's
Regina,
giant.
was it, or somewhere?
Yeah, Regina. Yeah, that's right.
Regina Rams.
I almost thought you said vagina, by the way.
Well,
when you pronounce it Regina.
Kiss my Regina, mate.
Yeah. Well, you can.
By the way, can I just get people to stop sending me their mock drafts as well, please?
Like some guy today drafted every single offensive lineman in the Big Four, and of course, it's the greatest draft in the history of all time.
All these mock draft simulators are great fun, but I've literally just looked at my Twitter there. I've got 57 notifications, and I would say about 45 of them are literally people sending me mock drafts or people commenting on other people's mock drafts. And I've just been it's just please make it stop. There's still 2 weeks to go. Make it stop.
Yeah. Well, I was mentioning before we got derailed by vagina talk.
Regina talk.
Yeah, Regina talk. Yes. I was mentioning they kind of signed an edge player in Calvin, kind of, maybe,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, he plays on the edge. He'll play a lot of snaps on the edge.
Plays all over, but yeah.
Emmanuel Ogbah is kind of an edge player.
He's going to be, if anything, for the Miami Dolphins, he's going to be more of an edge specialist. Like, he's not going to play inside that much. He can, but I mean,
But I look at this draft and kind of stacked, huh? Especially in that top, like I guess the top 60 pick area. Man,
really on edge players, like you think stacked on, because that's where I think it's lacking. I mean, unless you count. So Josh Uche, that's one thing.
Josh Uche, I think, is toward the end of that top 60 area, but Kelvon Chason, Zach Bond, of course Uche. I think Terrell Lewis is going to be highly drafted. Gross Matos, even Julian Okwara, who I don't like, Jabari Zuniga, who is a favorite of all three of us, and I think we had an argument of who brought him up first. I think Simon won that battle, didn't he?
Yeah, son of a bitch.
I mean, there's some good. I think there's some good players.
I just rattled off Bradley and I rattled off 7 guys.
No,
right there.
It's
pretty good.
No, there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth. Yeah. I take issue with the top of it, and I always have taken issue with the top of it with Chase Young, followed by who? Followed by Yetur Gross-Matos, who I've always had some issues with, and the way that he plays. AJ Epineza, who has some very good qualities, but when you're looking at him, you're like, he shouldn't be, like, if he's a top 10 pick, like people say that he is, then he shouldn't be this clearly like slow and out of his depth when it comes to things athletic, like speed wise and range.
I think you're looking at that. After Chase. Yeah, I think after Chase Young, though, you're looking at your more off-ball linebackers as much as anything, really, aren't you?
Yes.
Because I think the guys that we're slightly, it's that very difficult mix between are they an end, are they an off-ball linebacker? And when we say off-ball linebacker, you look at somebody who can essentially do, you look at Josh Uche is the perfect example of that. He's somebody that can cover down the field. He's somebody that can push the passer. Is somebody that can, play the run, set the edge, do whatever. And I think then you're looking at Caleb Von Chason, who is a very good all-round player who battled some injuries, I think. And, you can see him as a pass rusher. You can see him as an off-ball linebacker because he's so athletic. You watch him against Sam Cosmi, the Texas left tackle, and, early last season. And, Cosmi should be a high pick next year. And it's it's outstanding tape. I think the issue for me with Chason is that he has the Charles Harris disease a little bit, in that he doesn't quite, you just wonder, he had so many pressures and so few sacks in comparison. You just wonder why he wasn't converting more of those pressures into sacks. Look, Uche wouldn't surprise me. Chris and I have talked about this. I wouldn't be surprised if Uche went in the first round. He won't fit everybody's scheme, but I think, he will play he could play and play at a high level in a very varied amount of skis. He's a very good pass rusher, and I think he's just an incredibly smooth athlete.
The range of things he can do is incredible. Just to add, because he reduces inside and he can rush over the guard, right? He can play over the tackle, tight or certainly wide. He can play linebacker. You see him out in coverage in like Tampa 2 middle linebacker deep coverage, and see the way he runs. I mean, it's just anywhere.
High IQ player as well. High IQ player. Darrell Taylor, the kid at Tennessee, is a guy I really like. I think he's a rare physical specimen who's got, high end tools to be a really, really good player. He can win with speed. He can win with, using his length, his power off the edge. I think he dropped back into coverage. He can play the run really well. He understands leverage. He understands positioning. I think he's a fascinating player. And then, Zach Bourne is a guy that we've not even talked about, who sounds like he failed a drugs test, or at least there was excessive water used as a masking agent. Adam Schefter reported today at the Combine. We'll see how that affects his stock. He said that he's written to all 32 teams to say it was just trying to put on weight by just drinking copious amounts of water before the weigh-in at the Combine, but that will obviously be a question mark. But it's a very interesting, that sort of dynamic between, Gross Matos is not going to be an off-ball linebacker. Is he and then where do you see him? Where do you see Ebenezer versus where do you see guys like Uche? And the differentiation between those two positions is getting sort of bigger and bigger and bigger. There's the more years that we go on. But I do think there's some intriguing players there. We haven't talked about, a guy that Chris was ridiculously high on a long time ago, which is Alex Highsmith of Charlotte, who looks like he could play early as a sort of sub-package pass rusher. We all know that the Clemson guys, Tremaine Ankrum and John Simpson and Dabo Sweeney called him one of the best rush threats they faced in 2019. So I think
something to be mentioned about Kelvon Chason is on that team, which is one of the most, I guess, talented teams in the history of college football. He was handed the number 18 jersey, which is kind of a big deal in LSU, and it's given to supposedly their highest character leader on the team. He's essentially the team captain, including the Heisman Trophy winner, by the way. Okay.
I think they'll have 15 or 16 players drafted in the LSU. They'll have 15 or 16. I did a piece for the magazine.
Wow.
They've got a long snapper whose brother is the long snapper for the Bills. He is for the last 2 years, he's won the award for the best long snapper in college football. Wouldn't surprise me if he was the 16th player drafted. They had all 16 players. They've got 19 graduating players who are eligible for the draft. 16 of them went to the Combine. It's an incredible class. I mean, the interesting thing about Chason is that his father was murdered when he was 13. He was shot and killed. He hadn't played football for about 18 months and went to essentially sort of one of those elite camps to support a friend. And literally was just sat on the sideline, and friends were telling coaches, look, the guy over there hasn't played football for a while, high school football for a while, but he's really talented. Coach persuaded him to put some shoes on. He'd had no offers. By the end of the session, he had 5 offers from teams, including one from LSU, just based on that performance alone. He has ridiculous talent. But you look at these LSU class, I mean, the stories behind them are phenomenal. I think, you look at, I think in the modern, essentially since the draft went from 12 rounds to 7 in 94, Ohio State are the team with the most overall picks in a single draft, which is 14 in 2004. And Miami had 6 in 1 year in 2004, which is obviously the record. But I think if you look at this LSU draft class, and going through them, you've got Stephen Sullivan, the tight end, essentially homeless. His parents were arrested. They lived in a flea pit hotel. Parents were arrested. Him and his brother lived under a bridge on the outskirts of Dallas. He was rescued by a little league football coach. You've got Rashard Lawrence, the 5-star prospect who had a full beard at 13. Had to take he had to take a birth certificate to gain because authorities believed that he was a ringer. A full beard. I mean, his defensive line coach said, I've been coaching 52 years. He's the toughest player I've ever coached. He's a serious dude.
That reminds me of the story of Teddy Atlas when he used to take Mike Tyson to the Smokers in New York, which were these underground fights. And Mike Tyson was 13 years old, and the other trainers used to have 16-year-olds, and they would look at him and tell him, Teddy, what are you trying to pull here?
You've got the kind of the unwanted one. You've got Joe Burrow, the quarterback, who in just before Christmas 2013 was essentially DMing recruiting experts on Twitter saying, are there any specific camps I should go to because I've had no offers? Now all of a sudden he's the Heisman Trophy winner, almost certainly going to be the number one overall pick. You've got Patrick Queen, essentially known as the Miracle Baby. His dad played college ball at Nicholls State for early in the 80s, but was a massive LSU fan. They'd had 2 girls and were told they couldn't have any more kids, and Mrs. Queen fell pregnant. And rumor has it that when Patrick was born, his dad lifted him to the sky and said, "You're the Miracle Baby. You're destined to be an LSU Tiger." Now he's going to be likely a first-round pick. Justin Jefferson, 3-star afterthought. His brother obviously was Jordan Jefferson, who played quarterback in the BCS championship game in 2011. You got Lloyd Cushenberry, massive chip on his shoulder, a 2-star left tackle who was supposed to be going to Mississippi State, ended up going to LSU because he got a scholarship on National Signing Day, but only to play centre rather than left tackle. Thaddeus Moss, 5 high schools in 4 years, obviously son of Randy Moss. He's going to get drafted. You got the 2 Katrina refugees, Sadiq Charles and Grant Delpit. Obviously, Charles has got some off-field issues, but should get drafted. Delpit, we all know how good he is. Damian Lewis, son of a drug dealer. His father was who served 7.5 years of a 17-year sentence for sale of cocaine. Lives in one of the most impoverished places in all of America, in Canton, Mississippi. Obviously, Chason, his father, was shot dead. You got Michael Divinity, suspended 4 times for marijuana abuse at LSU. You got Jacob Phillips, who was falsely accused of rape when he first came to LSU. Charges were dropped because they were found not to be credible. Christian Fulton, obviously banned for playing for 2 years, which was then reduced down to 1 year for cheating a drugs test when he essentially used somebody else's urine during a PED test. And then you've got Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, who was involved in a fatal shooting when he and another teammate went to essentially sell some electronic equipment in a car park, and the guy pulled a gun on them and threatened to shoot them if they didn't hand it over. So one of Edwards-Hilaire or his teammate essentially shot the guy and killed him. But the police, they called the police, they waited, they were cooperative, and the prosecutor confirmed they'd essentially responded with justifiable force. And then you've got the long snapper that I mentioned just before this all started. So 16 potential prospects who could and probably likely should get drafted, which would break the record and be one hell of a haul for Ed Orgeron's team.
Yeah, I got 11 guys in the top 100. And tell me if you would add
Crazy.
anybody to this top 100. Okay, I got Burrow, Queen, Chason, Jefferson, Hilaire, Cushenberry, Fulton, Delpit, Lewis, Charles, Lawrence. That's my top 11 in the top 100. Anybody else sneaks in there?
Did you say Clyde Edwards-Hilaire?
Yeah.
I think Lawrence, Burrow, Queen, Jefferson, Cushenberry, Delpit, Lewis, Chason, Fulton, Edwards-Hilaire, maybe Phillips, but unlikely. I think he's probably the next likely to go after that.
He won't go 100, I don't think.
No, he probably won't. But I think he's probably the next one off the next cab off the rank, as it were. But I mean, that's still a phenomenal number.
Yeah,
well, we've been
incredible team.
Yeah, it's one, maybe the greatest of all time. And I know it's sacrilege to say that down here in Miami, but wow, what a team! What a team this LSU. You know,
I mean, how do you
dust off Clemson in that championship game?
Yeah. But Nebraska's 71 team. Remember that. Obviously Miami's 2001 team loaded with 40 odd players that went on to the NFL. People argue the Army's team.
Yeah,
after
the 86 Canes that lost to Penn State may have been the greatest team of all time, also, and they lost.
I think the key word there was lost to Penn State. But I mean, Army's team took the 6 best teams in the nation and beat them by an average of 45-6.
Jesus.
I mean, that's a hell of a team.
Did they bring their weapons to the field?
I think so. Yeah. Their running back just drove around in a tank, ran people over. So yeah.
Well, I've been parading a lot of edge players and 5 techs and 0 techs and defensive tackles, and I don't think we're buying much. Like we're just just playing around the edges. And now that I'm going to give you guys some linebackers, a lot of hybrid types. I don't suspect that either of you are going to be buying much in the top 60. Let's say with any of our picks leading up to pick number 70. Great players. They're all hybrids. I would say the best of the class are all hybrids, except maybe Malik Harrison is more a traditional type, and Jordan Brooks of Texas Tech. But Simon, are you buying anything with any of your picks up to pick number 70?
My top 5 linebackers would be Isaiah Simmons, Patrick Queen, Kenneth Murray, Marcus Bailey of Purdue, who to me is an absolute nailed on first round pick if he doesn't have the injury issues, and then Willie Gay of Mississippi State, who never started a game there, but is just a ridiculous player, but has had a number of off-field issues, including smashing the orbital bone of the face of his own quarterback. But I mean, I don't really see Queen and Murray as the, I know that Jerome Baker is not a Brian Flores archetype, but Queen and Murray, I don't think necessarily fit. Obviously, we know Simmons fits, but feels like he's going to be off the board, in the first sort of 5 or 6 picks. The Dolphins have shown interest in Marcus Bailey, which is pleasing. He's a great kid, just a tremendous 3-down linebacker. Obviously, 2 torn ACLs, one in the first season at Purdue, then played 40 games with no issues at all, and really put himself on the map. And then tore his ACL the back end of last season. He released a video last week showing how back to normal he was, and I think he's a great player. But obviously, there is a concern about the injury. But yeah, I mean, the Dolphins seem fairly. It feels like Raekwon McMillan and Jerome Baker are the guys, and it doesn't.
Well, don't forget Kyle Van Noy, what he can do.
And Kyle Van Noy, yeah.
And Vince Beagle plays in space. I mean, that's
sure, but it feels like they're more
Andrew Van Ginkel.
Yeah, but it feels like they're more.
And Eguavon is like a specialist now.
Yeah,
I don't think he's making the team, frankly. I mean, personal thing. I slightly view Beagle and Van Noy as more. I suppose Baker's not a traditional linebacker, but certainly McMillan is much more traditional. How in inverted commas, Baker obviously is a great blitzer, but in terms of in terms of guys like Beagle and Van Ginkel, you see them rushing the passer off the edge perhaps more than you would, Raekwon McMillan, for example. But
don't forget that they signed a Landon Roberts too.
Yeah.
He's a real linebacker.
Yeah, he's a real linebacker. For me, I just don't think it's necessarily a position of need. I think the interest in Bailey is one in which, if he does tumble into the, maybe into the early third day because of the injury issues, then perhaps you make a move for a guy. You invest, the risk reward is not quite as great for somebody that you might invest in the second or third round. But if we came out the draft without picking a linebacker at all, I wouldn't be surprised. A pure linebacker in inverted commas.
Now let me give you one guy, and I'm gonna give it to you, Chris, and you tell me what you think. Okay, he's not as athletic as our favorite Texas Tech linebacker. But whose tape is better than Jordan Brooks against the run in this draft? Can you find
lots of people? I don't like Jordan Brooks at all.
Really, you don't like?
Yeah, I watched him. I watched him plenty, and I tried to like him, but there's just not much there that's really striking to me. It's tough for a linebacker.
He's one-dimensional.
A bit. It's just tough for a linebacker to really impress me because the ones in the NFL that are doing that are making their way now are pretty athletic, and I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there on Jordan Brooks, but I don't think he's not striking me when I watch the tape and striking me with athleticism or just overall abilities. And I don't know. I'm just never like. I mean, I know he can run. I don't know. I don't like the guy. I just don't. I've watched him a bunch of times trying to like him, but I've got the same top 5 that Simon does basically, except a little bit different ordering. It's still in no particular order. It's still Simmons, Queen, Gay, Bailey, and Murray. I mean, that's who it is. And if you're not getting one of those guys, then you're going for sort of some maybe taking some shots. And I think Evan Weaver, California, is a guy worth taking a shot on.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to take a shot on the athleticism, then Malik Harrison or Jacob Phillips are specimens. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They're specimens. If you're going to take a shot on sort of a coverage guy, then you're looking at maybe Davian Taylor, who, Simon, you've talked about before as sort of a safety hybrid. Or, you know, Justin Sternad is not a safety hybrid, but he is more of a coverage guy, coverage linebacker type. You're going to take a shot at those guys. I've never particularly liked Jordan Brooks that much. I know that he can run fairly fast, but I just don't think he looks it on tape. 6'0", 240 pounds. You know, I'm just not terribly interested in it. I think that they could take somebody late, and, you know, maybe, like you said, Simon, Marcus Bailey gets a little bit too far because of the injuries. There's a roll of dice, maybe. Evan Weaver played at Cal. We do have a Cal coach now. There's a roll of the dice. Kaliki Hudson was a safety linebacker hybrid at Michigan, right? And we took his linebackers coach, basically, Anthony Campanile, who's specifically, you know, Hudson and Campanile have mentioned each other a couple of times, and I think that's why when we did our mock on air before, we took Kaliki Hudson in the last round. And I think that connection could be important. Josh Uche, you know, again, same connection with the coach that Miami has, but also he can rush off the edge, but he can also probably play real linebacker like Zach Bond, like everybody's planning for Zach Bond to do. I know that looking at Josh Uche in coverage, certainly he looks attractive when you got him running deep down the field and Tampa 2 type coverage, because he's fast enough for it, and he can hit his marks and really get and book it down there. Somebody like that with that sort of inside outside versatility would really appeal to Brian Flores anyway. Whereas some of the other guys, the linebackers that we're talking about, are, you know, more straight shots. And I feel like they might have enough straight shots because we mentioned Raekwon McMillan, but also, you know, they just picked up a Landon Roberts. And then they also got Jerome Baker, and, you know, Sam Agavon, I agree with you, but Terrell Hanks might actually make the team for all we know this year. You know, I think that I think they'll largely leave that position alone, unless Marcus Bailey gets too far. But otherwise, you know, we'll see.
Now, the more I look at this group, and yeah, there are some hybrids. So let's just throw out a comparison, and maybe one of these guys is going to be this guy, but Darius Leonard, Simmons, Queen, Murray. I think we all three of us have the same top three, because
I don't have Murray at third.
Okay. But
I like him, though.
I would say that those three guys are the hybrids: Simmons, Queen, Murray. Any of them better prospect than Darius Leonard?
Well, Simmons, I mean, Darius Leonard has progressed into an all-pro linebacker. You know, there was a reason he was taken.
Breed. It's the new breed. It's where we're headed. It's this 6'4", 232-pound, what used to be a strong safety type playing linebacker.
The game's changed so much, hasn't it? You know, you don't see. You know, there's not so many Harry Carsons anymore, because that's just not what, you know, we're a passing league now. I mean, Leonard's what, 6'2", 234, just looking now. 6'2", 230 combine.
I think if anybody's like Murray, if anybody's like Leonard, it's Murray.
Yeah.
I think Simmons is such a rare player, whereas Patrick Green is just a guy that, you know, it's just a fun guy to watch, sideline to sideline player. You know, smaller than Leonard, 6 foot 229, but you know, I like Queen a lot. I think he's an interesting player, but Simmons is just such a different. You know, I can't remember a player with the versatility of Isaiah Simmons, not for a long time.
All right, we kind of all three of us kind of like Simmons. So let's wrap up the linebackers. I guess we're not buyers for a linebacker in this draft, and I suspect, and I think all three of us agree that the Dolphins are likely not to draft one, and if they do, it'll be on the edges, somewhere around a 6th-round pick, maybe. So where does the cream of the crop of this group, Isaiah Simmons, where does he end up, Simon?
I mean, Giants at 4, Chargers at 6, Panthers at 7, Jaguars at 9. I think any of those landing spots could be, any of those teams could be landing spots for Isaiah Simmons. Detroit, potentially.
That's where
to partner with Davis and to play. He would fit in the Matt Patricia defense, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk. We'll get onto corners in a sec. There's a lot of talk. All of a sudden that Jeffrey Okuda's not flavor of the month and that CJ Henderson is, but let's see how that plays out next Thursday.
All right, Chris, where does he end up?
I don't think it's going to be Detroit or the Giants. I think the Giants are going to go with a tackle. I think Detroit is going to. Well, Detroit could trade down, frankly, but I think that they might be putting out some sort of a little bit of disinformation on the whole Henderson versus Okuda thing, which means they might be trying to trade, or I'm not really sure. But I don't think it's going to be Simmons because I think they have picked up some guys to help transition that defense. You're really looking at like Carolina or Jacksonville, I think. And, people will say he fell. That's not really falling when you're still in the top 10. I think it's about needs at that point. So yeah, I think could be somewhere 7, 8, 9.
Well, let's move on to cornerbacks. My opinion is he'll go to Detroit at 3, and if he doesn't go to Detroit at 3, he'll go to Detroit at 5.
That could be, yeah, I could see that.
Okay, and
or 6.
I guess. Oh, I don't want to hear that.
That's not.
Don't forget though. Don't forget. You could easily see the Chargers trading above Miami and then taking Justin Herbert and not Tua. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility.
I'll be dancing in my living room if that happens. Okay.
I hope so.
Because that means that the board just opened up for us. But speaking of the board opening up for us, till Byron Jones got into town, I had us taking a cornerback with one of our 1st-round picks. I think that's over with now. But this is a really good class. In my opinion, it's a really good class. But all I've seen for the last 4 days is every analyst everywhere taking a big, giant dump on it. Simon, your thoughts on this cornerback class?
I think it's a really good class. I think there's some really good players. I think it's a strong class, topped by Jeffrey Okuda. I think it's one of the best corners I've certainly graded in a number of years. He's great in both press, in zone. He's smooth. He's athletic. I hate to put any great substance in what happens at the combine, especially in the drills, but you see him in those, the back pedal drills, and he's just flipping his hips from side to side. He just looks so smooth. He's, he's very solid against the run. Team captain. I like CJ Henderson. I think he's a really good player. I think he's incredibly twitchy. I think he's great coverage, pure cover corner. I'm a big fan of Jeff Gladney at TCU. He would be my 3rd corner. I just think he's tough as nails, will play in your face the entire time. Noah Igbe, I can't even pronounce his second name. I'm not even going to try and do it. Noah, the corner from Auburn. I think he's a really good player. I really like Christian Fulton. And then you've got, I see a lot of people, positioning Jalen Johnson in the top 20, AJ Terrell getting into the 1st round. You've got Damon Arnett of Ohio State as an interesting player. I think it's a really good class. You go out Amik Robertson. Dolphins have shown interest in Javaris Davis of Auburn. There's lots of solid players here. But I think there's 4 or 5 that could end up going in the 1st round. Absolutely.
Chris? Yeah, I think that he said it all. I mean, Cameron Dantzler, I don't know if you quite got
I like
to
Dantzler
him,
a lot.
Cameron Dantzler deserves to be up there. I know he ran disappointing at the combine. He ran again, in private, and obviously ran much, much faster as corners tend to do, but he ran much, much, much faster in private. So
4.41 or something, was it? Yeah.
4.38 is supposedly
4.38, was it? Okay.
Yeah. But whether you trust it or not, who knows? But I think that he's worthy. He's lengthy. You've always seen him as a guy that's lengthy and can play press man, but has unusual hips for a guy that's that's built the way he is and plays the way he does. I think that he's a good player. Once you get beyond Dantzler, to me, it starts to, well, I guess, because it's all the guys you mentioned between Okudah, Fulton, Igbenogany, or whatever. Jalen Johnson, I don't know if you mentioned him at Utah.
Yeah.
He's really good. C.J. Henderson, Cameron Dantzler, Jeff Gladney, Trevon Diggs, A.J. Terrell. I don't know what you think, whether you think Damon Arnett is in a top group like that or not. But that's, gosh, how many guys there that you're talking about? Like 10 guys in a top group.
I think this is the best. This is the best class, because I'm looking back on drafts. I think this is the best class since the 2017 class that saw Marshawn Lattimore. It saw Marlon Humphrey, Adoree Jackson, who's really criminally underrated, really. One big miss in Gary and Conley, unfortunately, but Tre'Davious White. This is a really, really good class. I really like this class, and
Bryce Hall is another, coming
I was just going to say Bryce Hall, like injured. And maybe when you look at the tape a little bit, you're like, yeah, lengthy, but does he have the hips? But still good.
Yeah.
It's
got, you go down to like Javelin Guidry and Parnell Motley's a really good player.
You said Gary and Conley earlier. Parnell Motley to me is like, and I know that Gary and Conley's not a great player, but it's like this is bargain basement for Parnell Motley, whereas Gary went, how high? I think Parnell Motley is a very, very confident player. I mean, you watch him in those Shrine practices, and nobody had more confidence out there.
Now, let me give you, and let's start with, I'll start with you, Simon. I'm going to give you three guys. These three guys, I guess.
Meek Robertson, sorry.
They fit it's a loaded class. These three guys, in my opinion, fit that bill as far as what you want your cornerback to look: long, lean, fast. I'll give you the three guys, and you tell me what you think of them. A.J. Terrell of Clemson, who was off the charts at the combine. Troy Pride Jr., who was also off the charts, and I really like out of Notre Dame. And Trevon Diggs, who's kind of a mystery, but he's beginning to peek into mock drafts in the first round. So your thoughts on those three guys?
I like Terrell. I think he's that kind of long press corner, good size. I think he's got good feet. I think he's got good hands. He's aggressive. You only have to see him on tape to see his athleticism. I think the thing that made me nervous, I suppose, was just the complete deconstruction that he suffered in the national championship game, where he just seemed to sort of fall apart completely, and was just beasted by LSU. Justin Jefferson just took him to the cleaners, as did Jamar Chase. I think Diggs is intriguing. I just think he just flashes everything that great height, weight, length. He's strong. He's got good he's got good hands. In terms of getting in people's faces and things. He was somebody else that suffered at the hands of Jamar Chase. I think he gets really grabby down the field, and it makes me a little bit nervous. I just think I wonder how much long speed he has, and it feels like he's not overly confident in his ability to stay with people down the field. He just gets a little bit. I think he could be a penalty machine waiting to happen. And who was the other guy that you mentioned? Sorry,
Troy Pride Jr. Oh
yeah, another like a big fan of his as well. Was a receiver, I think, in high school. I think he was superb 2 years ago when everybody was talking about the kid who ended up going in the second round. His name completely escapes me. The Notre Dame corner. And I actually think Pride played as well, if not better, than him. I think he's really athletic. I think he can play multiple coverages. I think he's got good feet. I wonder about his ball production relative to his athletic ability, I suppose. And I suppose that's one of the knocks on Byron Jones. But I think you could absolutely play him. I think he could be an outstanding slot corner, and I think you would play very quickly for a team like the Dolphins. I like Pride an awful lot, and I think he's probably going to go on day 2.
Are you talking about Julian Love?
Hey.
Is that Notre Dame you were talking about, corner?
I think that's who he's talking about, right, Simon? Julian Love?
I was talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I thought he played. I thought as a teammate, I thought he outplayed Julian Love in 2018.
So, Chris, your thoughts?
On those three, I mean, I think Simon covered it. I'm not just gonna beat a dead horse on these guys. But we've already gone over so much of the corners here. What I would like to go over is just the underrated guys. You know, the Amik Robertsons. You know, out there. You know, what do you think about? Yeah, and what do you think about Neville Clark? We touched
I'll
on
transition. I'll transition
Parnell
to that, and I'll throw to you. And I'll throw to you, Chris. All right. With the expense of Byron Jones, and I don't think that they're going to be, you know, ponying up a high draft pick for a lot of these guys. I think a lot of these guys that we mentioned are top 30, top 40 type guys. Chris, what is out there that they can, I wouldn't say, you know, not bargain basement, but later on, day 3 types?
Yeah, I think that when you start getting into day 3, that's where we mentioned Parnell Motley before. Is that a bargain basement guy that, you know, has really good movement ability? You know, he ran a 4.50, but and which is good. And nobody plays out there with more confidence than him. I think that you look at somebody like Amik Robertson of Louisiana Tech. This is a short guy, but you know he reminds you of sort of like an Aaron Glenn type, I guess. And he's very he's a good ball hawk, and he's so competitive when you look at him. And I know that Brian Flores will appreciate guys that remind him of like an Antoine Winfield, the senior, not the junior, who's a safety, and we'll get to. I think that he's a late round guy. I think Neville Clark of UCF. I watched him again. It's about confidence. It's about how you play with confidence. And Neville Clark, when I watched him in shrine practices, you could tell, and you can see it on tape as well, that the way he processes the game and processes what the offense is doing and what the receiver is doing. You know, he's just a touch faster, and because of that, he's able to be very confident, even though he's not the speediest guy. And I think that this is the area that you have to look at for the Dolphins because of what they did last year when they took, you know, like Nick Needham and a bunch of undrafted free agents, and they sort of had them be the defensive backs coach. What's his name again? It's escaping me. Who's now, you know, coordinator. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Are we all forgetting it? That's impressive.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, that guy, his when you look at his projects, because he kind of singled out people, and Josh Boyer, yes, and he was looking for analogs to sort of the late round and undrafted guys that he was able to polish up in New England. And so that he took a guy like Nick Needham and had him playing right away as a rookie and playing above his above his calling. So I think that you're going to be looking at guys like that in this draft. You're going to be looking at guys that, you know, like Neville Clark, Lamar Jackson, who knows? I know that's a guy that Alf that you've talked about, and you like him as sort of a safety hybrid, corner hybrid. And I know that Miami will like safety corner hybrids as well. Javelin Guidry, I know that we just briefly mentioned him. The Dolphins have paid him attention. Very fast player, but played slot. He was a slot specialist, which is an unusual combination. You know, a lot of times your slot guys are not necessarily your burners. And so I think that a guy with the toughness and wherewithal to play the slot, who also is super duper fast, is going to be compelling. So there's another guy I'm struggling trying to remember his name. He's from FIU, and I was actually told it's Stanley Thomas Oliver the third.
Yeah, I know.
I'm told that the Dolphins that he's got fans, and the Dolphins might be a fan of him. I watched him at shrine practice, and quite frankly, he was awful. But he looked he is I should be more of a fan from him. I should be talking this guy up because he's from my alma mater. He went to Charlotte High School, in Punta Gorda, Florida. So he was not very good in the shrine practices, but boy, did he look the part. And I think that's what the scouts like, and what they look for is the guys that really can be brushed up and coached up, that look the part, that move the part. And then, hey, you get them away from FIU and you get them to an NFL team, and who knows, they could be one of these projects that, like a Nick Needham.
Yeah, and I'll give you
Javaris Davis is the guy that I think the Dolphins are going to, 4.38 speed. He's going to play slot. I think he's going to remind them a lot of Jonathan Jones, who obviously Flores would have known with the Patriots. I think he's a guy that, and have showed significant interest in him as well. Post the coronavirus shutdown, I think he's a guy that you could look at as a quality sort of man cover corner who could play the slot.
Yeah, and I'll give you another guy that the Dolphins supposedly kind of liked, but he was kind of a dud at the combine, and that was James Pierre. First of all, he shrunk because he's listed everywhere as 6'2", 190 pounds, and then he shows up at 6 feet, 183 pounds at the combine. Runs close to 4.6, I believe. Let me look it up.
Did he go to Missouri S&T? Because maybe the guy who did
more
the
of those
there was just cheating on the numbers again.
Yeah, well, he went to Florida Atlantic, which kind of the same thing. He ran 4.59, and this is a guy that the Dolphins supposedly had some interest in, but he's just had a pretty bad run up to the draft. But his tape's good, so who knows? And we're talking about 6-round picks here. Okay. Now, where we're not talking 6-round picks is the safety position. And I'm looking at that pick 26, and I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I'd make it the favorite. Besides running back, because I don't know. I'm seeing a J.K. Dobbins. I'm seeing a DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, maybe at 26. But besides running back, I think safety is a real possibility at 26. Your thoughts, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier on. It just depends what you like. Delpit, Winfield, McKinney, Chin, Ashton Davis, Carl Duga, Terrell Burgess. There's some really interesting safety prospects, and I definitely think the Dolphins will want to come away with a safety for all the reasons that we talked about earlier in the show. Julian Blackman, Brandon Jones, a really intelligent player. Kayvon Wallace at Clemson. There's a lot of good players out there that I think Lucky Gilman might be a late round guy that really fits the Brian Flores mold of that sort of intelligent. Geno Stone of Iowa, a really good player. I think there's a lot of interest, and it wouldn't surprise me if they double dipped actually. But I do think they'll take. I'd be very surprised if we come out of the second round without having selected a safety.
Chris?
Yeah, I think depending on where you consider Jeremy Chin. I mean, I was listening to Peter Schrager, and he was saying that he knows that Jeremy Chin is going to be a first rounder. So, I mean, and he is a big time, like athletic. I don't want to say Planet Theory for a safety, but he's 6 foot. He's a full 6'3" and 221 pounds, and he runs, somewhere between a 4.40 and a 4.45, and with a 41-inch vertical and 11'6" broad jump, and 20 bench reps. I mean, this is a specimen. Yes, he's probably going to go somewhere in that late first round area, maybe early second round. But is he going to be a linebacker for some teams? Is he going to be, kind of a hybrid? Where would Miami see him? Would Miami see him as sort of like an Isaiah Simmons light? It's possible. And so, yeah, you could look at him. Remember that in when you're picking in the first round, a lot of these teams really do want to come away with a great specimen. Somebody who's a sort of a paragon for a football player. So a Jeremy Chin, you have to put him up there because of that. But the guy that I think we all love is Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yes.
And that's the dude that, is he a paragon for the position as far as size and everything like that goes? No, he's 5'9" and 203 pounds. He's a little
Bob
over
Sanders.
5'9". Yeah, and he's fast like Bob, but he's also more of a ball hawk than Bob Sanders ever was. So I think that's worth considering. I think that he's got a lot of versatility in the secondary. He can play just about anywhere, really. I mean, he blitzes really well. He does everything. I love guys that just whatever you ask them to do, they do it really well. And he's one of those guys. He plays faster than everybody on the field, and I don't just mean physically. I mean he is moving to the ball more responsively and more quickly than anybody else out there in that Minnesota defense. And that Minnesota defense wasn't bad. They have some good players on it. I mean, he's just moving at a different speed than everybody there. And that's just, it's more than physical. I'm talking about his responsiveness to the ball and the way that he anticipates. I mean, just he's all over the place. He's one of those guys that's involved in every play, and he's one of those guys that does well at everything that you ask him to do, whether it's blitzing or, ask him to be in man-to-man coverage or ask him to be a, zone safety, deep center fielder, whatever you ask him to do. He's really, really impressive to me.
Are you concerned at all about Winfield's injury history? So couldn't finish 2017 and 2018 season with season-ending injuries, including I think he tore a ligament in his foot or in his ankle in 2018. Does that, especially given his size, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but does that concern you?
Yeah, it does. It concerns me. It concerns the NFL, I bet, too. And that's the reason he's going to fall. I don't think he's actually going to make it. If Dolphins are picking a safety at 26, I don't think it's going to be Winfield. I mean, I would think about it personally, but I don't think it's going to be Winfield. I think the NFL is going to let him fall through the second round a little bit because I think that they're going to punish some of these guys. That includes going back to Marcus Bailey, the guy that we talked about before. It's going to punish some of these guys that haven't been able to make it through multiple seasons. We talked about on the previous podcast, Natane Muti, and he's healthy right now, which is great news for him, but also he hasn't been healthy in his career. He's going to tumble down the board, even though he's probably the best, legitimately the best guard in the class. And I think Antoine Winfield is the best safety in the class, but he might take a tumble.
By the way, Natane Moody just had a physical and he was
the combine cleared, and he's healthy right now, so that's great news for him. But the bad news is teams are probably going to punish him for the way he couldn't stay healthy in college. And I think that Winfield might be in that boat, and so the Dolphins wouldn't be looking to pick him up probably unless it's in the first second round pick that they have, or the more likely the late second round pick that they have. I think if they're taking somebody at 26, I don't think it's going to be Xavier McKinney, to be honest. I think they're going to have a high grade on Ashton Davis. We talked about that already. I don't know if it's 26 high, but it could be that early second round pick high. But then I go back to guys like Kyle Duggar and Jeremy Chin, the absolute specimen guys. We didn't even mention, Duggar's combine, where he's full 6'1", 217 pounds, ran a 4.43 to 4.49, some depending on who's watch. 42-inch vertical, 11'2" broad jump, 17 bench. I mean, this is a true specimen, and he did really well at the Senior Bowl when he got that bump up. So did Jeremy Chin. So I think that, and if you're looking in that in that late first round, I have a feeling they're going to want to go with like a real, specimen type of guy. But if not, if they get to the second round, then you start looking at Ashton Davis because of the connections there and how perfect he can plug right into this defense. Or, maybe you get a bargain at 56 with Antoine Winfield.
Now, this guy is not a specimen, okay? And I don't think he's going to be there at 26 because nobody will consider him at 26. I don't think anybody's going to consider him at 39 or 56, 70 maybe. I don't think he will be there at 141. And I've enjoyed watching this guy play, and that's J.R. Reed of Georgia. Simon, your thoughts of him as a player, your thoughts of him as a fit for Miami?
Isn't he Jake Reed's boy?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I thought so.
Defensive captain, by the way, of the Georgia Bulldogs.
He's a big IQ player, and I think he's very instinctive. I think when I've seen him play on tape, I've always been. I'm just pulling up my notes. Yeah, I've always been impressed by his instincts. I think he lacks kind of range, and I think he's sort of role specific. I don't think you move around, but I think he's tough. I think he's smart. And I think that I think those NFL bloodlines will help him. I think he's a guy that can probably cover, a bigger slot and a tight end. I wonder about, I wonder about whether I don't think you're going to make him. He's not going to turn into a cornerstone of he's not going to turn into a cornerstone of your secondary. I don't think he'd be a useful part. But I mean, for me, I think if you're looking, are you looking at a Devin McCourty? And if so, to me, stop ignoring, and this is not to you guys, but this is just to the NFL generally, stop ignoring really good college players. And I would throw Grant Delpit into that mix. I mean, he was injured for all of last season. He's a tremendous player. And a guy we haven't even touched upon. This time last year, we were talking about him potentially being a top 10 pick. Mm-hmm. He only won the Thorpe Award this year. I mean, and I don't, he probably won it on false pretenses in a way, because I think Derek Stingley was the best defensive back in college football, but he didn't become a bad player overnight. So there's some really interesting volume of safeties in this draft, and J.R. Reed's another interesting guy. Remains to be seen whether or not the Dolphins take a chance on him.
Can I push back on you, Alf, though, for a second on whether he's a poor athlete or anything like that? Because he's a full 6'1", so that's good length.
Did run sub 4.6, which was a marker that he was trying to hit.
He ran between a 4.53 or 4.54 is what I have. He had a 10-foot 10-inch broad jump. I mean, these are things that you look for in your deep safety, and these are the exact sort of profile pieces that you look for in your free safety, your deep safety. And I think that he ticks those boxes. Has he been a fantastic player at Georgia? I don't necessarily know that, but he has been a very solid one. He does his job. And I will say that I've been told that Kirby Smart and Chris Greer are tight, and that you would expect a pipeline of Georgia players, from that pipeline. If I'm thinking of the right former Saban assistant, but yeah, I do get confused sometimes, I have to admit. But yeah, Kirby Smart and Chris Greer are pretty tight, and you'd expect. I'm told to expect a pipeline, a Georgia to the Dolphins pipeline, because of that. The similar to what you saw with the Patriots, kept picking up Rutgers players, and I think that if you're looking at that, then you're looking at J.R. Reed, and you'd say, okay, well, if you don't get one of those top guys, if you don't get the Kyle Duggar, Jeremy Chin, Antoine Winfield, Ashton Davis, Grant Delpit, or maybe you want to throw in Xavier McKinney in there, even though I'm not the biggest fan, then yeah, absolutely, J.R. Reed is right up top, front and center as the next available, or the next man up for them, and maybe even above some of those guys.
Yeah, what I find interesting is that how he's become underrated because nobody even talks about him. But my God, the season he had in 2019, first team AP All-American, first team All-SEC, captain of the Georgia Bulldogs. Okay, a team that was contending for a national championship. Jim Thorpe Award finalist. This guy can play. He can play football. He's precisely the guy that I would, like I said, I have the list of picks in front of me. I think if, pick 70 goes by, I think, we're shit out of luck. We're not going to get him because our next pick is at 131. Right. He will not be there, I don't believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So they're going to have to use that pick 70, or they're going to have to try to get another pick before that 141 mark to be able to get him. But I think that's his sweet spot is going to be in that third round. And yeah, man, I'd target him. Okay, now talking about, to finish up here and finish up part 2 of our NFL draft preview, because next week is draft week, guys. To finish up, we did this for the cornerbacks. Who are the day 3 guys? Simon, who are your day 3 guys at the safety position?
I like Geno Stone. I think he's a I think he's a really instinctive player. Kid from Iowa will probably sneak into the third day. I like Kayvon Wallace at Clemson. I think he's a really interesting player. I think, again, he's probably a third day player. I think, 5'11", 210 pounds. I think he ran 4.52 maybe. But, big game player, a really downhill blitzer, the kind of, disruptive, attacking the line of scrimmage player. I don't think you necessarily want him in, man-on-man coverage because I think his hips are a bit sticky. But I like him as a player. I like Julian Blackman of Utah. He's probably going to be a second-day player. Beyond that, I'm not over. Jordan Fuller at Ohio State is all right, but for me, it's then just a bunch of guys. To me, the strength of this class is definitely at the top end. I wonder about some of those corners, like Michael Ojemudia of Iowa, and wonder whether or not he could kick inside to be a safety. But overall, I think for me, the strength is in that. There's 5, 6, 7 players at the top end that I really like. Beyond that, I'm not sold that there's great depth.
Chris, your day 3 guys at the safety position.
Yeah, I think that we mentioned J.R. Reed. You could be right that he doesn't make it. He doesn't make it to the end of the 4th round pick. If he gets beyond our picks, if we haven't taken him at 70, maybe he doesn't make it to the next pick. But I also think that the Dolphins are going to try to slot themselves into some pick in between those picks, between 70 and 140 or whatever that space is. I think that the Dolphins are going to try and move the draft a little bit and slot themselves somewhere in between there. And you could be looking at J.R. Reed there. We mentioned Kaliki Hudson earlier as sort of a safety linebacker guy, already coached by one of the Dolphins coaches. I think that he's a guy to really watch out for. A guy that, some people, he probably won't be drafted, to be honest. But I like Patrick Nelson. I can't help but like Patrick Nelson of SMU. He's 5'11", maybe 211, 213 pounds, something like that. I don't know that he's going to show you burner speed or anything like that, but he is an all-around player. And when I say all-around player, I mean that he can do things that the Patriots were having Patrick Chung do. He's got the legitimate strong safety skill set. As far as being able to play in the box and being able to cover that way and help against the run. But he adds on to it. The more jobs he can do, the better. He adds on to it the fact that he's probably the best blitzing safety, certainly the most productive blitzing safety in all of college football. I mean, he had 18 tackles for losses and 12 sacks as a safety. He's 5'11", 211 pounds, and he plays like a strong safety. He's not going to be, a pass rushing outside linebacker. And it's understandable that people wonder how his role at SMU can really translate to the next level, because they did have him doing it so often because he was so good at it. But I think that I look at him and I see a typical strong safety skill set, but with the added job ability added in there. So I think that's one to watch as maybe an undrafted free agent. Who knows if somebody takes a shot on him in 7th round, but he's one of my faves.
Yeah, there's a few guys that I really like, and they were really good college football players like Jordan Fuller and Jalen Elliott. But good Lord, they ran so slow that it's almost a deal breaker. Like when you're running 4.7, you can't play safety in the NFL really, unless you're that special kind of guy. And in Jalen Elliott's case, he ran a 4.8. He might have been injured, but these are guys that great college football players. But I don't know. I suspect that they're not going to be. I don't know if they're high draft picks, but maybe 6th round, 7th round UDFA types, because teams are not going to overlook how slow they ran at the combine. Well, we were big buyers, and this is on the way out here. Big buyers on the offensive side, okay? All of us had to, of course, buying a quarterback, and getting several offensive linemen. One of us even liked a wide receiver. And let me see. Nobody liked a tight end, although we did talk up Troutman a little bit. But on the defensive end, we weren't big buyers. They have 14 picks, Simon. How many of them are defensive players next week?
I mean, I don't think they'll end up with 14, but I would say 5, 6.
So a little bit more, kind of an even draft, because you got to think that they're going to dump at least, well, not dump, but try to parlay 2 picks into more picks for 2021. So that's a pretty good approach that you have right there. Chris, how many are defensive players next week?
I think it's going to be a pretty even draft, because I think that the late picks are going to be geared toward the defensive side, where I think that some of the guys like Brian Flores and Josh Boyer particularly develop guys. And so, I think maybe DBs especially. And so I do believe that at least, something like 7 picks, 6-7 picks are going to end up being defensive players, even though we know they're going to spend a lot in the offensive line. We know that they've been doing a lot of work there, and they are going to get running backs. They are going to get offensive linemen, definitely, and they're going to get a quarterback. We know that. But I think there's going to be a lot of defensive players in there.
Yeah, it could be. I see 2 running backs. I see a quarterback, and I see 3 offensive linemen. So that's a lot right there to begin with. But yeah, it does leave a few picks. Yeah, I think Simon has it about right. About 5 defensive players seems about right. And they won't use all 14. I think they'll use 12 picks. So 7 offensive players, 5 defensive players. That seems like a good mix. All right. Next week is draft week, guys. So we'll plan something for you. We'll think something up. But this has been part 2 of your NFL draft preview. We've given you 3 hours of NFL draft preview. Listen to them both, download both, and then download them again, and then again, and again, and again, and give us about 50 to 60,000 downloads, all right? All right, we will talk to you guys next week, which is draft week.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.